What's going on there, YouTube? I'm back once again. A lot of you have been requesting me to do a video on how to build a box mod. Guess what? That's what I'll be doing today. But I won't be doing a wood box mod because that would take a long time. Plus, it involves using power tools such as, at least for me, I use a table saw, a router, what else? And sorts of other power tools to build a box. So I don't want to talk and use, for example, a table saw, because that's a little dangerous. You know, when I use my power tools, I like to be focused on what I'm doing for safety. You know, I don't want to chop my fingers off while doing a video, so I'm not gonna do that. But what I'll be doing is I will build one using a Hammond box right here. Basically, as far as parts, you know, they're all pretty much the same, other than the box itself. There's an additional part that I'll be using because, you know, for a box mod, you know, you really don't need a battery sled because this is fitted for 2 batteries. So that's basically going to be an extra part that I'll be using, you know, a battery sled, one of these right here. But everything else is pretty much the same. Before I get started, I'm just take a few hits. This is my plume veil. I polished it up a little bit, you know. Normally it's just a kind of like a satin or a brushed stainless steel finish, but I went ahead and put a mirror shine to it. And oh my god! I'm also using my DIY e-liquid here. Ooh. So first thing, I'm gonna go over the parts that you will need to build this, and then we'll press on with you know, the build. First thing, you'll need a box. This is a Hammond 1590B in black. You can get this from, I will post in the description, either in the description below, or I'll post a comment that will list all the parts you'll need and where to get them. So, you know, just to kind of shorten up the video a little bit more. So yeah, you'll need a Hammond project box. This is again the 1590B in black. I think this is powder coat, but whatever. You'll need a battery sled. This is a Keystone 1048 battery sled. You'll need the a 510 connector. This is from Fat Daddy Vapes. You'll need a switch and some wires. I'll be using 14 gauge solid copper wires that you can pick up from Lowe's or Home Depot or any other hardware store that carries wires. This is just your standard 14 gauge solid copper wire. You can only use 16 or 18, but I won't go any lower. I mean, not lower, but thinner gauge than 18 gauge. But this is 14. I tried 12. It didn't fit the 510 connector. But you could always, if you want to use 12 gauge, you can always sand the one end of the wire so it'll fit the 510 connector or 510 pin. So those are all the parts you'll need for, you know, the box itself, to make the box. Tools you'll need. I'm pretty sure not everyone's gonna have one of these. This is a step drill. you know, for drilling out your switch hole and 510 hole. Because for the switch you'll need a 5/8 inch size hole. I mean, you can get a regular drill bit that size, but they're pretty expensive. But or you can just have one of these right here. I picked this up from Harbor Freight for I think $5. You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, but they cost a lot. But for what we'll be using this on, it works perfectly because this is a pretty soft metal. This is aluminum, so this thing works awesome. Again, step drill. You can get it from Harbor Freight. You're gonna need some, you know, a needle nose or a wrench for tightening up the nut on the switch and 510. Let's see. You're gonna need a soldering iron, some solder. I am using flux paste because the solder that will be using is not a flux core. It doesn't have a flux in it, so that's why I'm using separate flux paste. Some acid brush, you know, to clean your after you solder. Some alcohol. This is just regular isopropyl alcohol for, you know, cleaning your solder joints. What else? Oh, JB Weld for your battery sled, to secure your battery sled inside the box. Some Loctite. I'll show you where I use this Loctite. This is the permanent. Oh, actually, this is removable. I'm sorry. Loctite. What else? Some, you know, just basic tools like a jewelry screwdriver. But as I go along, I will show you what tools I'll be using. So let's get started. You know, so basically, just to kind of shorten up the video, I already did a few things on this box, like drilled the holes and also secured the battery sled in there. And I also went ahead and did the negative wire. But I will explain how I did all this. Alright, so let's get started. Just turn this down a little bit. So first thing, for your 510, basically when you guys do any sort of woodworking or metal work or whatever it is, that make sure you guys measure twice and drill or cut once. Alright, I'm just going to remind you all that, because once you either cut or drill, that's it. You're gonna have to make it work, you know, if you guys make a mistake. But that's why, you know, just want to let you guys know, measure twice before you guys do anything like drill or cut. So for the 510 connector, again, this is the Fat Daddy Vapes with the 22mm spacer. The size hole you'll need for this is 3/8 inch, but I went slightly bigger than that. That's because sometimes when I drill, you know, I don't exactly drill it where I wanted it to be, so I kind of drilled it bigger so I can actually move the 510 connector to center it, you know, so it'll have a little bit of room in there to move either up and down this way or this way, you know, so I can center it. Also, make sure before you drill a hole that you measure where you're going to put the 510 connector. Basically, if you're going to center it, then you shouldn't have any issues with it. You know, just drill a hole in the center. But I chose to drill it. I chose to put the 510 connector on one side. So basically, before you drill, make sure that you don't set the 510 too far in this direction, because if you do, remember there's a nut there and also a washer for your negative. You know, make sure that you'll be able to put the nut on and also turn it, because if you, once again, if you set it too far this way, it has this kind of ledge right here for the screw. You know, if you drill it too far in this direction, you won't be able to turn the nut. So right there. So again, set everything, you know, try to make sure before you drill, know where you're gonna put the 510 connector. So I got it in there right now, so you can see there. All right. So again, as far as the hole size hole I drilled, it's 7/16 inch. And for the switch, the same kind of thing. You know, before you guys put this on, once again, this is this thing uses a nut. So make sure when you try to locate where to put it, make sure you have enough room on the other side so you can tighten the nut. And the size hole is 5/8 inch, and I drilled that exact. One thing to note too, as you can see there, the hole is kind of off-centered a little bit from this end and this end. It's lower. That's because the lid has a lip right there, right here, that goes inside the inside of this. So if you center this, which you might not be able to, you know, when you tighten the nut, you never know which direction is going to be, you know, because again, the nut is not round. It has these points right here. So if you happen to put the switch in and you tighten the nut and it ends up going like this, pointy side up, you might not, the lid's not going to sit flush because the lip is going to hit the top of that nut. You know, sometimes you might get lucky that the nut, when you tighten it fully, it'll go this way. But just to be on the safe side, I drilled it lower, so I don't have to worry about this nut, you know, whatever position it ends up at when I tighten it, I'll be able to, the lid is going to sit flush. Alright, that's just one thing to note right there. So once again, I already drilled it. If you use this, it'll leave a clean hole, you know, no burrs, no nothing. I also use tape on this side just to mark where I'm going to drill. And also when drilling, you don't drill with this, you know, drill a pilot hole, really small drill bit, and then since the smallest size on here is 3/16, I used once I drilled the pilot hole, I used a 3/16 drill bit to, you know, enlarge the hole, and then I used this to get the right size for the hole, the desired diameter of the hole. Alright, so pilot hole, and then use a 3/16 if you're going to use one of this. Use a 3/16 drill bit to drill to enlarge the pilot hole, and then use this for the desired diameter of the hole. Alright, so that's what it looks like. So basically this is my preference. I want the switch here, 510 on this side, so it can go like that. Alright, and after I drill the holes, I used, after I drill the holes, I prepped the battery sled. When you buy the battery sled, this is a Keystone 1048. It's gonna come like this. So you can see there's like, cause this, I guess this is made for a PCB. Basically, I just cut this off. Use the razor to trim that off, and there's another smaller guide pin right here. So I just took that off also. So this thing will sit flush at the bottom. And also the contacts have these tabs right here. This is where you would normally solder your wires, but I cut that off because, as you can see, it sits flush at the bottom, all sides. And basically you don't want that touching the box, because, you know, you're gonna short it out. You're gonna get it short. So what I did was I used some shears right here, cut those tabs off. So now all you're left is this right here. That's what you have there. See? So now this shouldn't touch the bottom. And in addition, I prepped this this contact also. If you look at the, let's pull this thing off, so you can see the difference. Damn, the thing is on there, son of a bitch. Ow. Get out of there. So basically the original tab looks like that. See how this thing is, you know, the angle kind of goes like that and then down. Basically a lot of people use it like this, and then when they put the battery on, you know, on the sled, the sleeve of the battery or the wrap will catch right here and it'll rip it off. So what I did is I bent it inwards. See the difference now? It's bent inwards, so when you put the battery in, the wrap's not gonna catch. Alright? So make sure you guys do that. Set that aside. So I did that to all contacts. And then the battery sled, I used some JB Weld to secure it inside the box. You can see there. So this shouldn't go anywhere now. And the way I lined it up, I didn't center it inside the box. Which way did I do it? So I secured it all the way down, and then also in that direction. So as you can see, there's a slight gap in here. Basically I did that so when I bend the wires for the negative and route it all the way up, it's straight up and it lines up perfectly with the 510 connector. That's why I suggest to you guys to dry fit everything first before you guys secure your parts. You can see there, because if I would have centered it, the wire would be bent in this direction. I mean, I could have adjusted. Yeah, so right there. And also, in addition, as you can see there, before I secured the sled inside, I pre-bent the wire to the contour of the sled. As you can see there, there's an angle right there and another angle right here. So that's just the way I do it. You guys don't have to do that, but that's just how I do it. Alright, so you can see there. And I'll give you guys a side view. See it right there. So, and how I trapped this wire, how I did this right here, so you can see, before I put the contacts on, I lined up the wire and I trapped it between the contacts. You can see there. See how it's basically it's kind of in between like this. It's inside the contact. Basically it's like that. And also when you push the contact down, the wire shouldn't move. The wire shouldn't move because it's sitting on top of the ledge, like this ledge. The wire is resting on top of here when you push the contact down. And I just put a little bit of solder in here, just this side and this side, the inside part. Just a little bit of solder, you know, not too much. You can see there. And also on this end, you know, this is probably the hardest part, is you know, the wiring portion, because you're going to do a little bit of bend if you do use solid copper wires. But if you're using stranded, then you don't have to do all this work. But I think to me it just looks better with the solid. And again, for the washer, for the 5/10, this is normally flat. This is normally flat. I just bend the tab for the where there's a little hole there. I just bent the tab perpendicular, and then I fed the wire through the hole, bent it up, squeezed it with pliers so you get that tight connection. I put a little blob of solder in there, so you can see there, just a little bit of solder, not too much. You can see it up close there. Alright, and I soldered it before I assembled the 510 connector. Basically, for the 510 connector, before you solder anything, disassemble it, because if you leave everything intact, like fully assembled, you're gonna risk melting this insulator right here. And trust me, it happened to me. So make sure you guys disassemble. Basically, this is the center pin. Here's the spring for it. There's an O-ring in there too. And this is the cap. I'll show you guys how to assemble that later. But if you go to Fat Daddy Vapes, they have a picture diagram on how to put this switch together or disassemble it. Alright, so this is what I've done so far. Right there. Alright, in addition, when you buy this box, it'll come with 4 screws basically to secure the lid. All I did with the screw was I cut the head off. You can see there, it's inside there now. I cut the head off using a Dremel and a cutoff wheel, and then I put a slot. I put a slot in it so I can actually screw it down. Basically, it ends up looking like a grub screw or a set screw. And then I applied some Loctite, you know, so it won't back out. Because I'm going to use magnets for the case, which I already did. Right here, let's get this out of the way. See right there, the magnets I use on here are the 1/4 inch diameter by 2 millimeters thick, and I drilled, you know, the holes to 1/4 inch, and I applied some JB weld too. You can see inside, see the JB weld, because I pushed the magnet this side, you know, so you can see there's a little bit of JB weld right there, but it should hold. See, shouldn't go anywhere. Bam. So that's the lid. I just want that. So that's done. That's how you do the lid. All right, what's next? So next is we're gonna assemble the switch and the positive wires. All right. Basically, once again, I already pre-bent all my wires. You know, it's got a little bit of intricate bending right here, but you don't have to do this. You know, this is just how I do it. Basically, when you guys try to put one of these together, you know, like I said, dry fit everything, and then pre-bend the wires, you know, so you know if it's gonna line up or not. You know, don't just glue everything together and then start bending the wires, because it's a lot easier when everything is out. And as far as the switch, you know, there's been a lot of talk about switches. This is the same switch I've been using for my box mods. You know, I got the wood box mod right here. It's the exact same switch. This is your 3 amp anti-vandal or momentary push button switch that you get from eBay. You know, this costs anywhere from $3 to $6 or some even $7. But you know, this is just 3 amps again, but that's 3 amps at 100 or at 240 volts. as far as performance with my box mod, I haven't had any issues. You know, this doesn't have any MOSFETs in it. Will it fail eventually? I don't know. Who knows? But so far, I've had this for a long time now and haven't failed yet. Still works. So again, some of the modders out there that are building box mods and claiming their switch is rated at 60 amps or 30 amps, those are bullshit numbers. Basically, if you go directly to the manufacturers of these switches, you will not find a switch in their anti-vandal or a similar design switch that have a specific rating of 60 amps or 30 amps at the voltage that we use for vaping, like 4.2 volts or maybe upwards of 8.4. You will not find a specific spec for a switch at that amp rating. You will not find one. Trust me, I did my research already. But I'm not advocating you guys use this switch. I'm using it. I'm using this switch at my own risk. I'm not selling these box mods, so this is for my own personal use. But again, I've done my research, and I believe this is sufficient enough for what we use it on, or for what I use it on. But for those modders out there that are claiming their switches are rated at 60 amps, that's all BS, meaning bullshit. They're just making up their own numbers. You know, they're saying that these are engineered, tested. Sure, tested, but not rated. You know, unless the manufacturer states that it's rated at 60 amps, then go get those kind of switch. But as far as for this particular design or anti-vandal or momentary push button switch like this, you're not going to find one that specifically states it that it's rated at 60 amps at 4.2 volts or 8 volts or 3 volts. Just no way. And DC. Nope. I'm sorry. So for you modders out there that are claiming that your switch is rated at a certain amperage, please do your research and don't calculate your own amp for your switch. But if you do find one, please post it. You know, people should know where you guys get your parts from, you know, because again, you're not the first one to make one of these, so what the fuck. Come on, man. Again, it'll be safer for the vapors out there that will like to make their own if they can get the appropriate switch. You know, if you're claiming you have a 60 amp switch, why can't we buy it? You know, you're not the one that manufactured that switch. So basically, we're gonna assemble this. No, later. Yeah. So what I like to do with this switch is like what I did with my other one. I like to put a nut on the outside just for the looks, you know. It doesn't really serve any purpose, just for the looks, because I have a couple extra nut for these type of switches. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put it on there, and I'm not gonna solder the wires in the switch this time. I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna use the screws. So put it right there. I'm gonna put the other nut inside just to kind of hold it in place. Where are we at? Damn, we're already at 30 minutes. Once again, this is gonna go long because I have to explain what I'm doing. So bear with me. This might be a 2-part or 3-part video. So now this is my pre-bent positive wire. Basically same thing again. I'm gonna trap this with the contacts, but I'm gonna kind of fit it in here first. So basically it's gonna look like, ooh, shit, that one fell. see if I can hold this. So it's gonna look like that right there. I see that again. I follow the contour of the battery sled there. I didn't just bend it straight out, you know. I just kind of followed it too. Again, this is just my preference. So now I'm gonna trap this with a contact. I'm gonna show you guys the up close. See that? So I'm just gonna push this thing all the way down. So should look like that. And I'm gonna, before I tighten the screw, I'm gonna solder this first because I don't want this switch making connection with the wire, because I don't want to burn up the switch assembly. So before I tighten up that screw on the switch, I'm gonna solder it first. Again, I'm just gonna apply a little bit of paste flux on the inside part, and let's solder. Sure I clean my solder tip. Let's turn it this way. You only need a little bit. I'll show you guys later what it looks like. But, put some more flux on the other side. There.